Hi, everybody. It's Joe Chaffee. Hope everyone had a happy Thanksgiving. It's Friday night, 9:30 Eastern Time, and figured we'd give a good, solid look to the weather tonight going into the weekend because we do have some weather going on with a winter storm that is beginning to take shape in the Rockies and eventually moving out into the Central Plains. We, of course, here in the east, but in particular the northeast, not so much the southeast in Florida, but from the northern mid-Atlantic into New England. In many areas, this was the coldest Thanksgiving since 1901. And for New York City, at least, it ranked as the third coldest. And the low temperature, by measures of the low temperatures in the morning, it was the second coldest. This was quite a run indeed with respect to this shot of Arctic air. The question for the longer range is it a shot across the bow? Is it combined that with the 6 to 12-inch snowfall from last week? And is it a sign of the winter ahead, or is it going to be like it was in 1989, where we had snow on Thanksgiving Day, 4 to 8 inch snowfall. By the next morning, it was down in the teens and single digits in many areas, and that wound up being for a lot of spots. It was the heaviest snow of the winter and the coldest temperatures we saw all winter. So there's no way to say that as November goes, so goes the rest of the winter. So we'll get started. Just real quick, just want to give a nudge here to my Patreon platform for those of you who are on it. You've been quite active, and we keep it busy over there. So if you're, into weather, if weather is your thing, you might want to consider joining the Patreon platform. It's just $2 a month, and you get posts for Patreon members. And as we did this morning, and it's on the YouTube library, if you want to take a look at it, you get to see you get hopefully a daily live stream from me just for Patreon members. So I'm going to put the link on the board. Thank you so much, Salem Surveying, for hitting Super Chat tonight. Really appreciate it. Thank you. It's very generous of you. I really appreciate it. We got Delvin on board, James NASCAR France, Stephen Franco, James Vitale. Haven't seen you in a while. William Huber, happy Thanksgiving to you. Monica Randolph, nice to see you. And welcome tonight on tonight's YouTube live stream. Also, one other thing, I do have my weather app for those of you that are in the northern New Jersey, Long Island, New York City, Hudson Valley, and southern Connecticut area. And the app is available for those of you who have Android mobile devices. It's on Google Play. So let me just really quick put the link up for that. That is an absolutely free app. So download it. For those of you who have iPhones, as I've been saying for the last number of nights, it's sitting on somebody's computer over at Apple, and I'm hoping that any day now we'll get the approval. So as soon as they put it up on the Apple App Store, we'll get you the link and put it out there. But there's the link there for those of you who are on the Google platform, on the who have an Android and would go to Google Play. Okay, let's get started here. And we're going to take a look first and foremost. We'll go front and center with the watches and warnings that are already up, and there are actually quite a few of them out in the west and over into the Central Plains. So we'll bring that front and center here on the screen and take a look at what's up so far as winter weather advisories and warnings and watches and so on. You can always check these, by the way, if you go to weather.gov, but there are two weather systems here in play. There's the one in the east that is going to be coming up for Saturday and Saturday night. Some cold air is going to get trapped probably in the mountains up the Appalachians, so we have winter weather advisories up for western North Carolina, western Virginia, eastern West Virginia. There's actually there's a small area in there where we have winter storm warnings up. It's very hard to see on this wide view, but I'll show you on a tighter view in just a second. And out further west, a narrow band of winter storm watches starts out in southeastern Wisconsin and goes through northwestern Illinois and then continues west through southern Iowa, northern Missouri. It changes over to winter weather advisories for parts of Nebraska and Kansas, then back to a watch as you go on into Wyoming. And that's where we have a number of winter storm warnings up, and even some high wind watches and warnings up there too, and also peppered in that mess some winter weather advisories, some winter storm warnings up in parts of western Washington, and we've got some winter weather advisories up in the mountains in northeastern California. Now, we're going to go back and forth on these two systems, so I'm going to sort of shift now to the system in the east. And first off, with respect to temperatures tonight, they are not, except in a few spots. Now, if you're on Long Island, for example, if you're in central and eastern Long Island, at the moment, you've got clear skies and light winds, and that's why you see those temperatures that are down in the upper teens. If you're in parts of interior New Jersey and the Pine Barrens, you're seeing some numbers down in the upper teens. The 19 is probably Tom's River. I'm not sure what the 19 is up in Somerset County, but you do get these areas here, especially in heavily wooded areas in central and South Jersey, that just cool off like crazy in situations like this. And then you're back into the 20s. So most temperatures tonight are nowhere like they were last night, where we hit bottom in the single digits and even below zero across parts of upstate New York and over into New England. Hang on one second, folks. Just a second. I'm roasting some pecans in my oven, so I just had to make sure I shut the oven off. Meanwhile, you go out to the west from there, from the coast, and you'll notice, look at these temperatures up in the Midwest. Now, the cold shot never really got into the Great Lakes and into the Ohio Valley. This was mainly for the Northeast and Northern Mid-Atlantic. So you go west of the Appalachians, and temperatures are already in the 40s, and that warmer air is headed east. But you're still seeing some trapped cold air down in through parts of West Virginia and western North Carolina. You can see all these temperatures at the moment that are sitting in the 30s, and a lot of spots are close to or even below the freezing mark. So sometimes even when you get a high that goes out off the Jersey coast, that still allows for some cold air to get trapped in and against the mountains in Virginia, West Virginia, down into western North Carolina. And this is the situation we have right now. So this is why we got these winter weather advisories that have been posted. The first system, as we go into the Ohio Valley and over to the Great Lakes, it's not that cold right now. Temperatures are in the 40s, but it's when you start to get back into the plains and further west and some colder air that's going to be coming down, you're going to see these temperatures all drop off during the day on Saturday and into Saturday night and Sunday. So as a result, the second weather system is going to be the troublemaker there as it moves eastward. So here's the radar tonight, and we've got an expanding area of rain here that runs from the Great Lakes southward, the upper Midwest southward to east of the Mississippi. There's some heavy rains, probably even a couple of thunderstorms in the mix here, running down into Tennessee and on up into Alabama and Mississippi. If you notice the structure of this, it's very narrow from the north to the south. It really is the signature of the upper trough, the way it's set up. And you're starting to get precipitation going into western North Carolina, where the temperatures are below freezing. So the winter weather advisories are justified. This precip's coming in a bit faster, and the cold air definitely being trapped at low levels. I'm thinking that the models really haven't been doing a good job in showing the extent of the cold air that's getting trapped back over to our west. And as we move into the Rockies, you start to see some snows up in northern Utah to southern Idaho, and you've got that precipitation out in the west with rain and snow in California, and then on up into parts of Oregon and Washington. Mostly rain near the coast and some snow inland. So a pretty busy radar shaping up here for tonight, and this is going to be moving fairly quickly to the east. I'm just going to go back to the national weather, the weather.gov watches and warnings map. I just want to show you that the two small counties that they have up winter storm warnings that are posted, and I'm just trying to see from the standpoint. This is in Maryland. It looks like in Western Maryland that we're seeing this winter storm warning that is up for that small area. I'm not sure why. We'll pull up the advisory here. So actually, this is for I'm just trying to see here in Maryland, central and the eastern parts of the Allegheny, and it's mainly for freezing rain mixed with sleet at the onset. Expected to begin. Ice accumulations about 1/4 of an inch. So that's a pretty significant ice accumulation that's being indicated there before the wintry precipitation turns over to rain. And it will do that. It is going to turn over to plain rain before it's all said and done. Now, where's that? Here we go. So here's the snow forecast map from the Weather Service. And the snow amounts significant up in the northern Rockies. You're seeing, you don't see all the printout numbers here, but in that, the reddish, the pinkish areas in the red, then you're starting to talk about areas that are going to get 1 foot plus. But, the general snowfall in this band looks like it's to be anywhere from 1 to 4 inches. And then you got these pockets where some higher amounts are indicated, and the darker blues where we have the winter storm watches up, probably going for 4 to 8 in a band from northern Missouri, southern Iowa, northeastward into northwestern Illinois, and then just about reaching to Milwaukee. They're forecasting 4, 2 for Chicago. Nothing being forecast much. Looks like Denver's kind of on the edge here as far as the snowfall is concerned. It's hard to see on the big map. Let's see if I can get a little tighter. Let's see where that plot is. So Denver, yeah, actually just kind of on the edge there as far as the heavy snow is concerned. And then we move it to the east and also up into parts of northern Michigan. We don't have advisories yet up for that area, but you'll probably wind up seeing some winter weather advisories there. And with this next weather system in the northeast, not a whole lot of snow with this. Some 1 to 3 inch amounts indicated for parts of Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. It looks like they've got a 6 print out here, so I imagine that's just elevation driven. And why don't we check the ice forecast? That being significant to the east, we'll let the map plot out. And actually, even showing some ice possibilities as far. This is for later Monday, so let me just back the timing of it here, so it'll plot. And come on, plot. It figures. When you want this to plot the map up quickly and it doesn't. This is supposed to be for total ice accumulation. Let me make sure I got the right. Total new ice, that'll work. Okay. So here's your total ice. Now the map is plotting out. So you are going to get some areas here down into the Carolina Mountains with amounts of 1/10 of an inch, 0.15. You're looking at up to a few pockets here in western Maryland, indicating up to 2/10 of an inch. And as we saw on the Weather Service forecast, they're thinking that there could be as much as a 1/4 of an inch of liquid precip. So on to the let's take a look. We're gonna have the new NAM out here, so that's always good. This is the time when the NAM model comes out between 9 and 10 o'clock Eastern time. So I'm gonna jump. Let's refresh this. I'll jump up over to the new NAM model and see what it's doing. All right, so we back it up here. So this kind of matches up pretty well with the radar. You can see the radar right now, as we saw there was rain in western North Carolina with temperatures below freezing. The NAM picking up on that freezing rain tonight, moving northward into Pennsylvania. And then it gradually just turns over to rain. For my neck of the woods, from eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, it's hard to believe when you think about it. You had all this brutally cold air. I mean, we're talking about temperatures that, if you seasonally adjust this for January, you would have had lows down near zero along the coast and below zero in a good chunk of the Northeast and interior northern mid-Atlantic. But being that it's where we are in the calendars, we're heading toward the end of November, and the average temperatures, at least in New York, are still up over 50. You're going to see, as Arctic air pulls out, that the atmosphere is going to want to snap back uh, quickly to normal, particularly because you don't have any cold air left. That cold air is out, and we have to wait for the next cold air mass to drop down from Canada to come into the United States. So we're dealing with air that's been warmed up through the plains and into the Midwest. So it's rain for the into the mid-Atlantic and into the Northeast. And there's actually going to be, if you look at this, if there's a low here, we'll go tighter here for tomorrow. There's a low that's up in Canada. There's really almost a long warm front that runs southward, south to the eastward from there. There's another low that's going to be developing right on that warm front. You can see it here, how the NAM picks it up, 1,001 low. So the winds are going to be southeast. It might actually get fairly breezy tomorrow, later tomorrow afternoon, and certainly tomorrow night. With perhaps because of that low developing where it is, there probably will be some heavy rains that will move on through Saturday night into early Sunday morning. The low goes right over Long Island, but by daybreak, it's already now moving east of Cape Cod. So we're going to see improving weather conditions here on Sunday. Sunday is your day to decorate outside, okay? Because temperatures are going to be in the 50s. Now, pulling back wider, we can watch how the next system comes out of the Central Plains. This is going to come to the east on Monday. You've got a low in Oklahoma. You see that expanding area of snow in Nebraska and Iowa. Colder air is coming down from Canada. It's a narrow band. It's not covering a whole lot of territory here. And then it runs up to the northeast. Looks like it starts off as rain and changes to snow in Chicago as the low starts to go by, and then runs up into southeastern Canada. We'll have a trailing cold front with that, with what looks like some showers here at some point Monday afternoon into Monday night. And then after that, it looks like it'll turn colder again, but not like what we just saw. We're not going to get another shot of brutally cold air. The strong upper trough that produced that brutally cold air is pulling out. And as a result, we've got some Canadian cold air, but we don't have a really, really intense shot coming down from the Arctic. Now, there's your trough that we brought in the cold air. It pulls out. Bit of a ridge built in today. You got the next trough that is swinging up for Saturday, and then that lifts out, and then yet another system diving into the northern plains. Into the northern Rockies during Saturday. That swings around and moves and lifts up. In the meantime, through all of this, take a look at what's going on again. Up in Greenland, you've got this blocking high that builds in, you got this upper low that's sitting northeast of Newfoundland. You've got this other upper low in north central Canada. The blocking high kind of puts itself right in between the two. So at least through next week, you're going to have the jet stream south of normal, as long as that blocking high holds. This will bring in that some colder air as we move through Tuesday and Wednesday, and maybe even into Thursday. The trough itself, if you watch what's happening, the eastern part is lifting up and around, and it's stretching. Okay, it's kind of stretching east-west, and there's another arm of energy that's dropping down into the western legs, and then that swings to the east coast by the time we get to Wednesday. I think what will probably happen is you'll have some kind of low form off the southeast coast and run out northeast offshore. The problem here is for coastal storm issues is that the trough is doing this rotation a little bit too far to the east. There's literally no room. The flow across the Atlantic, from the Atlantic seaboard out into the Atlantic, is almost straight westerly. So even if you were to get a surface low to develop, You can't really bring it up the coast. It's just the flow is not southwest enough. You would need this to be much further to the west. If you look at the western edge of this stretching upper low, if it were to stretch back, say, into the Dakotas, then you probably could have something important developing for the middle of next week. But as long as that trough is positioned where it is in the east, there really isn't going to be much room. The longer term, with this block to the north up in Canada, starts to weaken. All the models seem to want to weaken that block. Maybe it's weakening it too fast, but they all do weaken it, and that will have some implications for the beginning of December. We were looking at two quote storm signals, one for the last days of November into the first day of or so of December. Well, the models kind of changed that equation. If the block is breaking down and the trough in the east is pulling out, you're actually going to get a bit of a ridge that's going to develop. So you see how, at least when you get these storm signals in the long range, you have to be really careful with them because they don't often pan out the way you think. And with the block weakening a bit, that is enough to sort of change this profile of what we thought for the end of the month. And we do have some energy that's going to be coming in as we move toward December 3rd and 4th, and that was another day of interest. But here too, looks like you probably will see something that's going to maybe wind up going toward the Great Lakes rather than moving towards, say, the southeast and then running up the eastern seaboard. So it's a change here in the overall pattern. You still are going to have a negative NAO through the forecast period, but once that block breaks down, the NAO actually trends up close to neutral in the long range, and at least from the late afternoon run uh, on the operational model, by the way, on the late afternoon run, uh, it looks like it wants to make the trough go out in the west in the long range. I would also be very cautious of that because when we look at the ensembles today, the ensembles had a much colder look to them. Okay, it really wasn't showing the trough going to the west. It was kind of holding it on in the eastern part of the United States. So uh, the long range as always winds up being, once you get past the 6th or 7th day, really does wind up being a huge mystery uh, because you know that it's going to gradually evolve and change as we go forward. Here's the GFS on the full view. The rain for the Northeast for Saturday night, the storm that's coming out through the plains for Sunday and heading for the Great Lakes. That runs up into near Toronto, and that is rain for us. Now we've got cold air spreading out during next week. Again, no room. You start to see this sort of a wave out here in the Atlantic, again, because the trough is right on the coast. It's too far to the east. And then that pulls out. And running forward as we head toward December 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, you've got this high up in New England, cold air that's trying to build down into the Northeast and Northern Mid-Atlantic. But if the block is gone, that high is going to go out. And at least from this model, running a few others, wanting to take that low toward the Great Lakes. This is tonight's solution. Again, I'm very I'm skeptical, with stuff past the 7th day as it is, and I'm going to remain skeptical going forward. Rainfall amounts, by the way, are going to be fairly significant for the first event, especially if you get that surface low to develop. Let's see, bring up the rain map. Thank you. So we're looking at 1 to 2 inch rains. Let's back this up. So we're looking at about 1 to some 2-inch rainfalls and even some 2-inch plus rainfalls from the system for Saturday night and Sunday into the east. And then maybe let me separate it out now. So we'll go to the 24-hour. So for Monday, much less. It looks like that's generally a half an inch or less. With the system going up to the lakes the way it's being shown, there's not going to be a whole lot of Atlantic moisture to deal with. You got two systems back to back like this. Usually the first one kind of robs the moisture to some degree from the second one. And as for the snowfall, not not very much here in the Northeast. Much of what you're seeing reflected there in the mountains from western North Carolina on up into central Pennsylvania, we know that's going to be mostly ice. And there's the snow that's being indicated for Iowa and on up into parts of Wisconsin, showing a band of heavier snow there. And we'll take a look at the west also in the western U.S. with the snowfall, because this is, again, much of this is coming over tonight and tomorrow. You're getting snows up in the Rockies. This kind of matches up pretty well with the Weather Service's forecast and with what the NAM is doing with respect to the total snowfall in that particular region. So the cold air being trapped into the east, into the Carolina mountains up into Pennsylvania, that will eventually all go to rain. So it's a matter of just waiting for those temperatures to kind of make their way higher and get up above the freezing mark. We're still, by the way, here, at least last check, as I saw, we're in the upper teens. We're going to probably see the temperatures stop going. They've already pretty much bottomed out in the coldest spots. They're going to start holding and then probably begin a slow rise during the overnight period. And once we go above freezing, we're probably going to stay there until maybe Tuesday night. Anthony Orr, GFS ensembles are showing a phase 8-1 signal of the MJO, which is often overlooked, but is important. If that's the case, it would favor cold air in the east through around the 8th of December. Yeah, I think there's, between the block and between all the other things that are going on out in the Pacific, there's a lot of instability in the model runs. I want to be, I certainly want to be cautious going forward as far as, what may happen. We'll probably start seeing models shift around a little bit tomorrow, so just bear that in mind. Oh, quick hello to Delvin, to Alcina Al-Wazali. Nice to see you. Myra Bentley, 99 Wolves, Tim Day, Sean K, Nitrovert. In Winona, Minnesota, what are the snowfall amounts looking like in southeastern Minnesota through Monday? Well, you may be too far north with this. Judging from the model runs from today, you're going to need a little bit more of a shift to the north to get that snow into you. The NAM is actually even further south than the GFS, believe it or not. So there really isn't too much. There's some snow going on in northeastern Minnesota, but not very much forecast there for southeast Minnesota. Monica Randolph, my husband came and Joe, and he said, "You're always watching Joe. Turn him off." I said, "He'll know. Joe is my meteorologist." Well, I appreciate you watching, even though he tells you to turn me off. I appreciate that. PlayStation Boss, Euro is very consistent with the snow further south. NAM and GFS have been fluctuating a lot and keeping it further north. Yeah, I think that's going to be the case with the system that's going in through the Midwest. It's not a big system though. There's not it's got a limited amount of energy to work on. The Gulf of Mexico isn't really opened up for it to bring heavy, a big snowstorm up there. This is going to be another one of those nuisance falls. But it's for where we are in the calendar, seeing all this stuff happen. This is a sign to me that we're going to be busy during the winter months. I'm still not 100% sure. Where's the ultimate? I often think that what happens is when we go to the middle part of December, the latter part of December, we kind of lock into a pattern that's going to be the dominating pattern for the winter time. Maybe what we just saw is kind of a shot across the bow with regards to where we're going down the road. So we'll see. I've seen that happen before, where we get these cold periods in November into early December, and then the pattern just shifts, and it's a warm pattern for the bulk of the winter. That certainly has happened. November is similar to November 38. Only November in the last 100 years to have both consecutive days with lows in the teens and a 6-inch snowstorm. Uh, did we look to see what the winter of 38-39 was like, Scott? That would be an interesting question. And I mentioned on the Patreon live stream this morning, and I did save it. I have to find it, but I did save a link. Let me see if I can post it. Hang on one second. If I can look it up very, very quickly. Hold on. Scratching my ear while I'm talking to everybody. Okay, hang on one second. I did get a link from someone who showed me copies of some newspaper stories from England and Ireland, from the UK Met Office, for the period in 1938 about what happened with the weather there. Let's see, was this it? Let's see. Yes, here we go. So, all right, so let me go back. I'm going to make a copy of this link if I can. Let me, hopefully this will print out on the chat board and you guys can take a look at it. Let's see if I have success with this, because it's one of those links that sometimes they look short, but in reality, yeah, this may be a problem. Let's see. Yeah, it's not going to let me post it. It's too long. Okay. Well, we'll do it another way. Let me try one other way here. Okay, hang on. Let's see if this does it. This is really, I love seeing stuff from old newspapers. Hopefully this will paste. Yep, there you go. So take a look at this, folks. This was really pretty fascinating stuff when you read some of these old newspaper articles about weather in the past. And this again also was in 38. From the month, it's the monthly weather report of the Meteorological Office in England, and it's Crown copyrighted. Okay, December 1937. Cold, widespread snow and frost from the 4th to the 21st. So I'd be curious to see what happened in the east during that time frame. And we've got the surface map, but unfortunately, we can't really go back and look on its calendar, because its calendar only goes back to 1985. So unfortunately, we can't go back to 1938. But I'm going to do a little digging tomorrow when I've got some time. I'm going to sit down and take a look at that. William Uber going into New York City tomorrow for the night. What time does the rain start, and what time does it get heavy? Figure it might get in there 4 or 5 o'clock in the late afternoon, early evening, but it should be gone before daybreak. But it might be raining heavily during those hours there in the later evening into the early morning hours. So bear that in mind. So yeah, maybe around 9:30, there might be some heavy rain around. Do I think Jared Peterson, welcome aboard. Nice to see you here. Thanks for coming on to the channel. Do I think the Jonesboro, Arkansas will see a very cold and active winter? You know what? The early cold and snow back through Texas and Oklahoma, and I think you got a little bit of some snow in parts of northwestern Arkansas in one of the events in the last couple of weeks. To see that now probably lends to the argument that with the more active southern storm track that's being induced by the weak El Nino, and if you've got the cold feed coming down from Canada, which, except with the exception of the shot that came into the east, up until then, much of the colder anomalies have been more focused on the Midwest and plains and points southward. Perhaps you will have an active and snowy winter ahead. Nitrovert, the WPC is showing a second band of snow north of the main snowfall in your area. Where is your area, Nitrovert? I forget. The chance of 4 inches plus. Not sure where they're getting the second band from, but I'm curious. Yeah, just tell me where you're from. Hey, Chris Alley, nice to see you here. Johnny Quest, get ready for some ice and then some rain out your way with this shot that's coming by. Although I think the heaviest rains are probably going to be north and east of you. So you'll put down whatever you put down with this. I don't think this is going to be any kind of crazy rain once it changes over. No major storms on the horizon right now, Jarrett Don. We've got these more like these nuisance systems that are going by, and the models are certainly not. They've kind of backed off from these stormier signals. Yeah, that's another thing with the storm signals. When you see them, people talking about them on the internet, it doesn't always tell you what the magnitude of the system is going to be. So if you don't get all those, if you don't get the short waves to line up in a certain way, if you don't have the block in a certain spot, you could have all this energy running around, but it never really organizes into much of anything. Do I think the NAM has the right idea for a Chicago snowstorm? I don't know. 99 Wolves. I think you're going to start as rain there before you go over to snow. You might wind up, you're going to be on the edge of that. So you'd have to. What we should watch for you is if the models trend a little bit colder up through the northern plains and into the western lakes, and you get more of that cold air to come down a bit further south. The NAM makes it close, so let's give it another couple of runs to see how it's going. No, Timothy, I'm not watching football. Actually, I got the TV turned off right now. Monica, coming back from New Orleans, nice, to Atlanta. Will be driving weather be good? When are you going? Uh, I think if you're going to see the low in the Central Plains, it will probably trend a little bit further south, Nitrovert. That's from what I'm seeing right now and from some of the recent trends. Well, there's Scott Griller already giving the answer for December 1938 here in New York City anyway, only 1.7 inches in December. Might want to also give a check to Albany to see what they got, and maybe a couple of other spots, Albany, Hartford, Boston, just to maybe get a gauge, because if there's 1.7 for New York City doesn't necessarily mean that just inland of the coast maybe they got more. So we get a few more points to see if we can get a clearer picture of that. Monica, I'm sorry. So when are you driving back from New Orleans, or to Atlanta? Because I'm just going to pull the map up again. All right, here we go. By the way, I trust everybody's all digested from their turkey. I've had so much turkey in the last week, I have to tell you. Well, the rain that's moving now, I mean, I'm assuming if you're going either tomorrow or Sunday, your weather's fine. There's nothing in the cards for the daytime Saturday or the daytime Sunday. Between, there's still going to be some left. The last of the leftover showers will be moving out of North Georgia tomorrow morning, and then it's done. There's really nothing, excuse me, that's going to be bothersome for you driving from New Orleans to Atlanta. You know what, Nitrovert? I don't know I don't know the answer to that question. I really don't. It certainly seems like at least you're going to get that you'll be getting a lot of the cold part of the equation. I'm not a long range guy. Okay, and I've said this many times. I'm not a long range guy. So if I give you an opinion, it would be just a very, very rough guess with respect to your area. Sometimes, what happens is you get a lot of your action now, but as the jet stream, which has a tendency to want to get further south as we go into January and February, that you wind up seeing most of the storms passing to the south, so you get cold, but you don't get a lot of snow during the January-February timeframe. That's a very general statement I'm making here, but I don't know. I don't know how the upper air is going to set up much beyond the next 7 to 10 days. So it's a mystery and anyone's guess. And anyone's guess. Oh, 68 inches for the season in 38-39 in Albany. Okay, well, that was at least for the season. 67.3, says Timothy Veltman. All right. Well, that for them, I guess I forgot what Albany's normal is. That sounds like it might be a little bit above average, but not too far above average if my my memory serves me correctly, which it doesn't always do. Freezing rain ongoing from Rick 8013 in Northwest North Carolina as you type. Listening to Highway Patrol, it's a mess up there right now. I can see it. We can see it on the radar, and you can see from the temperature profile in Western North Carolina. Just to give it another look, we can look at the 10 o'clock temperatures now because they are out. Let me just pop up the map. I'll bring it over into Western North Carolina here. We'll let the numbers populate. There you go. So you do have a large area here with temperatures that are down at the freezing mark, 32, 33, 35. But you got a number of spots even in the upper 20s in the northwestern corner of the state. And then you get down into Western Virginia, and the radar was busy there. In fact, we'll get close up. And you've got this band of rain that is moving right through Western North Carolina into that area where temperatures are below freezing. So it looks like some heavy rain in there too. So, and maybe even some sleet in the mix, I bet. You are going to get you are getting those icing issues, and they're going to continue for a while until those temperatures go above 32. Let's see. Yeah, look, you can't. You know what? As you start looking at the long range with the models, you really can't pay. You can't really put a whole lot of value in what the models do with regards to the snow maps outside of the very short range. Okay, because then it becomes really just a big dice roll, and every model shift is going to change those numbers. I really wouldn't, put too much stock. Uh, my view is the way to use those maps is to just kind of show at least the area where you think snow is going to fall, and maybe you could outline a potential area that winds up getting 4+. But I wouldn't put any stock in any specific numbers when the models spit them up. And 3 days ago, the GFS had a storm in the Twin Cities area. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Now it's in southern Iowa. You will save yourself a lot of emotional distress if you just always go into the fact that when you see the models make big storms in the long range and spit out these huge amounts on the maps, that they're really not all that useful when it comes to trying to gain a perspective of the long range outlook. The real thing to do is to just kind of get a good flavor for what the upper air is telling you with regards to the overall pattern, and let the short range pattern kind of play itself out, because that'll, you'll start to get answers to those questions once you get inside once you get inside 72 hours. Central Park record is 73. I'm not sure, Scott. What are you referring to? Is that's is that that can't be the total snowfall for the whole winter? I'm not sure. I can't seem to find the thread of that particular thread of the conversation to know what that is in reference to. I wouldn't put much stock in your area being in dry for any length of time. Well, at least after this first system for tomorrow, the heavy rains are going to be more north and east of you. After that, I don't know that you're going to get a whole lot coming in on Monday. And with that next, with the system behind it, being that it's a bit more moisture starved, it's going to pass well to your north and west. That looks more like a cold front coming through with just some showers for you, and that's about it. Let's see, Daryl Conan, nice to see you on board. Welcome. The Euro model is beginning to slip. I would just say, PlayStation boss, all models have their times where they work well, and then there are times when they don't work well. And then you get those moments every once in a while where maybe 2 or 3 of them are working very well and the differences are very, very small. Unfortunately, those times don't happen very often. And when they do, it lends a high degree of confidence to the overall forecast. But anytime you have a blocking high in the North Atlantic, especially when it's a strong blocking high, I just think it makes the models, just with all of that going on in the upper atmosphere where it's stretched to an extreme, and also when the ridge in the west, any of the pressure changes that we look at when we look at the teleconnection indices, be it the Pacific North America Index, the North Atlantic Oscillation, or the East Pacific Oscillation, when any of those, or if a multiple of them, are stretched out to extreme positive or negative readings, it does lead to models being, they just have a tough time handling that, because the atmosphere doesn't like to stay in an extreme position. It'll always try to snap back at some point and at least go back to near normal, or compensate by going eventually into the other direction. And uh, it makes them hard tools to use, pretty much. Let's see. The average snowfall for our area for Long Island, Stephen? Yeah, it's probably, in the last, if you look at the average snowfall since 2000 on Long Island, it's up at around 43 or 4. The Many of the winters in that time frame have produced above and much above normal snowfall. I know where I'm sitting last year, I had 75. The long-term average at Brookhaven Labs is 31.7. So let's say 32. Let's just round it off to 32. Higher than New York City, which is, that's something that we've corrected. Everybody seems to think, but because we sit on the coast, that we get less, but that is not the case out here. But in the last 20 years, we've seen so many above normal snowfall winters that the average for since 2000, as I said, going through last winter, is up around 43, 44 inches. I think I forgot what the exact number was when I did the math. The last time I looked, did all the math with regards to that, but I remember it was up on the high end of the low 40s. When you look at what's been happening in terms of snow in my area, okay, uh, we are due for a subpar year. This year has certainly not started as a subpar year. We're above normal for November, and if we don't see a flake for the month of December, we're going to be still above normal going into January. So we're already way ahead of the game. I shouldn't say that. That's not quite true. I was using 6 inches as a number, so I was using it New York City. The snowfall here was about a 2 to 5 inch snowfall from Long Island from last Thursday. So we're gonna need another snowfall to keep it at least near normal if we, when we get to the end of December. Dayton, Ohio hasn't seen an 8 inch plus snowfall in 6 to 7 years. Jakey Snakey. That happened, that happened here in New York City in the 70s. From 1970 until 1975, there had not been a snowfall greater than 4 inches, okay, in that time frame. And I think in 1975, in mid-February 1975, we had Central Park had an 8 inch snowfall, and that was the first one, the first snowfall of over 6 inches in 6 winters. So you do, and in fact, you want an interesting statistic? I just recalled from in Chicago. Chicago went from 1970 from let's say December of 1979 up until 1997, I believe. It went 18 years without seeing a snowstorm of more than 10 inches. That's incredible when you think about Chicago, because that part of the Midwest and points north certainly have a reputation for getting a lot of, a fair amount of snow. Certainly the normal snowfall for Chicago, as I remember it, is about 40. New York City is just under 30. So to go 18 years without seeing a snowfall of 10 inches or more, that's a long, long time. So you do get these long periods that settle in, depending on what the overall global long-term pattern is, where you don't get a lot of snow, and then you get into these periods where you get absolutely bombarded with it. It's the when you look at all the averages, the one thing you will notice throughout just about everywhere you live, except for some odd spots where snow is not an issue, for example, but you will notice that when you look at the average numbers, seldom is the weather average. when you look at the daily departures of the highs and lows every day, it's rare that you get days that are 0 or +1 or -1. You're usually swinging from one end to the other. Sometimes you're swinging way over from one extreme to the other. William Uber, you pretty much support what I've been saying. You've had over 60 inches for quite a few years here, the snow belts of Long Island, and a couple of those years were very warm winters. Just go back 2 winters ago. We had one of our warmest winters we've ever had, and we had one of our snow, and it was a winter that produced a substantial amount of snowfall of 50 to 60 inches in many locations. 12, Scott Briller, of the last 18 winters at Central Park have been above average. I think for Long Island, it's been 13 out of the last 18, or possibly even 14, but I'll go with 13 out of the last 18. And if you look between 1970 and 2000, of the 30 winters in that time frame, only I think 5 of them were above average. 5 or 6 of them were above average, and 24, 5 of them were below. That's how radical the shift has been. We went from literally being in a snow drought for 30 years into a snow bonanza for the last 18. And if you want to think that we're in, if you think that this is some kind of cycle that we're in, the cycle probably has more room to run over the next 5 or 10 years. It may not be done yet. Let's see. 79 and 97 was like the 1982-2000 bull market in the stock market. 1,096 days difference. Weather guys or market guys. Well, there is some, if you look at people that do technical analysis in the stock market, they look for patterns. They look for, they read charts. They look for patterns, higher highs, lower lows, that kind of thing. Bull market, bear market, double bottoms, head and shoulders, tops, reverse head and shoulders, bottoms. They look for these repeating patterns that have occurred to try to catch a rising or a falling stock. There's not a lot of difference between the concept that you use, the approach. It's a technical approach, and there's not a lot. There's a lot of similarities to forecasting. They're forecasting prices, stock prices, and we're forecasting weather. It's inconsistent if you don't base your patterns on the long term. Yeah, but at the same time, oftentimes, Daryl, I would just say that usually when you recognize what the long-term pattern is, it may have already run a good part of its course. That's the problem here. If you watch, you're not aware of the longer range pattern until it's well underway. And then at that point, you have to start asking yourself, okay, well, how long am I going to ride this? All right. Nobody catches the absolute bottom, and hardly anyone catches an absolute bottom, and hardly anyone catches the absolute top. PlayStation boss, what's scary is being on the long fetch of Lake Michigan, knowing that Erie, PA, and Buffalo, New York lake effect snow event is just bound to happen. Under the right setup, it is. Those epic lake effect events that do happen don't happen every winter or even every other winter. They do get, obviously, the lake effect areas, they do get hit very hard, but to see those super lake effect epic events that we've had, those don't happen too often, and the setups that cause those things to happen are pretty rare, but you do look for it. Eric P, technical analysis. Thank you. Appreciate the kind words. All right, folks, this has been a good live stream tonight. It's a holiday weekend, so everybody's kind of taking it a bit slow, and totally understandable. Thank you again for hitting super chat tonight. Salem Surveying, really, really appreciate it greatly. That gets me a cigar tomorrow, so I will be enjoying that. Daryl, hold your question for another night, because I really got to wrap it up at this point. But I believe the paleoclimatologists that say we're going to a grand solar minimum, or are we already in one? I don't know too much about it. I will tell you this: there is research there is research going on with respect to the whether the activity of the sun, and there's a lot of people who are proponents of that. I don't really know too much about it. I just kind of have a really basic view, so I don't feel comfortable in expressing an opinion one way or another. But it is legit in the sense that there are people really taking a look at this, the Maunder minimum, solar minimum, whatever. I think that's what it's called. Seth Dominus has just put that up. But there is research that is being done that is looking at that sort of thing. Okay, time to wrap it up here, folks. So thanks again for being here. Once again, those of you who are really weather geeky and would like to get more weather all of the time, consider joining my Patreon platform for $2 a month. The link is up there. It's also on my website, meteorologistjoechaffee.com. By the way, one other way you can support my channel, if you shop on Amazon, and of course, you're doing your Christmas shopping. Monday is Cyber Monday. The Amazon link that's on the descriptor to this live stream and the descriptor to this video, and now also on the chat board. So if you shop on Amazon and you use that link, that's a great way to support my channel and to support what I do on the internet with my websites and with my app. You can get your stuff. It doesn't cost you anything, and Amazon throws me back a bit of coin, and everybody's happy. So it's an easy way to do it because it doesn't really cost you anything. And some of you have done that, and I really, really appreciate it. Thank you, Seth Dominus. I really appreciate the kind words and the kind rating. And again, if you are on an Android mobile device, you can take a look at my. You can download my app, which I had up here a second ago, and now I've lost it. So let me get the link for that. But you can download my app for your Android mobile device. If you live in the New York City, Northern New Jersey, Long Island, Southern Connecticut, Lower Hudson Valley area, it would be quite useful. And there it is on Google Play, and hopefully it will be available for you iPhone users before the next big snowstorm arrives. I'm kind of hoping that they approve it over the weekend and that I'll have it sometime next week. So keep your fingers crossed. All right, regular live stream. Probably do one tomorrow and again on Sunday. Patreon members, you'll get your private live stream during the day tomorrow. So just keep an eye for the link on Patreon for where to go on YouTube and at what time. Thanks again for everybody being here. I hope your Thanksgiving has been terrific. I hope your stomach's not bothering you too much after all the food you might have eaten. And we will see you tomorrow.